Look at me, yeah. Remember when they hated, didn't think we make it. Now they break their neck just to look at me. Remember when I called you and you didn't fall through. Now you hate yourself, you can't look at me, look at me. Yeah. You made me. Yeah. Look at me.
And what up? What's good with y'all? All right, so right now, as y'all can see, I have this lovely view behind me. It's a little bit on the windy side, so hopefully the mic isn't picking up too much wind. I do have the dead cat on there, but that isn't always a given or a promise. But what are we getting into today? Why am I here? Why is the 350Z right here parked illegally in a spot that it's not supposed to be parked at? So today I'm about to be giving y'all a full review on the LS3 350Z and what I think. I've never done a review on any of my cars, and this is my first V8, and I'm pretty sure people are interested in like, how does it feel? What do you think coming from turbo cars, etc., etc.? So today I'm gonna give y'all a full review on what I think of my LS3 350Z setup. Before I get started, let me give y'all, you know, the cold start. Alright, so for those that are new to my channel, may not be familiar with the car, a little insider on the car. This is a built LS3 setup, has a Texas speed block basically, forged pistons and rods. The compression is slightly higher, but I'm in California, I'm on 91, so I didn't go too crazy with the, you know, with the compression levels. It has a Texas speed stage 3 cam also, BTR valve springs, stock intake manifold, stock injectors, is on HP tuners, and it has a custom 3.5-inch intake that I made, and I downsized it from a 4-inch. But show y'all that real quick so y'all can see. Factory fuel rails, nothing crazy on here. It has the long tubes from the swap kit, which is the ISR swap kit, and then it has the air rate adapter for the MAF setup. And like I said, this is the intake I built. It's running 2 small 12-inch fans on here. Well, they do cool with cooling. Before I had the Mishimoto fans on there, wasn't cooling too well, but seems to be doing a lot better now. Still waiting to install the oil cooler and everything on here. Be doing that next week. It also has a flex fuel setup, so this car is set up for flex fuel, but I'm currently not running it. As you can see, the wiring to it isn't hooked up, but everything is plumbed and ready to go for flex fuel. So in the future, I might end up doing that. And since I am going to be driving around, tire setup. The tire setup is 305/30 R888s. This is a 19x13. The car is 50 millimeters over in the rear, and then in the front, I have the Fly One front fenders. These fenders are full carbon, and these are 15 millimeter wider than stock. This has a 19x9.5 in the front with a 245/35 BC coils, and has, you know, all the adjustable Megan arms on here. Front upper control arms are ISR. Car handles really good. There isn't much camber. Car only has about a degree of camber in the rear and about 4.1 up front. But my car is set up to function. It's, you know, it's supposed to go straight. It'll handle well. Doesn't really rub at all. So when I hit bumps, I don't have to worry about it blowing out the fenders. Everything on here is set up to actually perform and work. It's not one of those cars that just sit there, it looks good. Like, it will function. And with that being said, let's take this thing out for a drive. The beginning of the review. We're just cruising right now. Drivability on this thing is good, no issues as far as that goes. Alright, so before we get to talking, y'all already know the first thing that a lot of people, they always argue about, the low end torque on LS's. That is one thing that they are praised so much for, is the low end power and, you know, the linear power band. So before we even get to all the chit chatting, let's get a couple pulls in. Tunnel, baby, y'all know. Ooh, bump, ooh, bump. distort the mic. That was loud as hell. That was hella loud. But yeah, as you can see, it has tons of low end. The power band on here is so different compared to any of my other cars. So all my other cars are turboed or supercharged, and my two LSs are actually my only naturally aspirated cars. And when I say my two LSs, I'm referring to my Corvette and this car. So, you know, obviously I got the Corvette with an LS1, and that is nothing compared to a LS3. Like the 5.7 compared to the 6.2, completely different. You know, this has so much low end, whereas the Vette's kind of like, you know, it's smooth, but it doesn't have the grunt that this has. So, you know, I tell everybody I'm not an LS1 fan, but if I had to pick a LS, it would definitely be a LS3. I'm a big fan of the LS3s. Make a lot more power in stock form, and then with damn near just a cam, you know, you'll be at almost 500 horsepower with an LS3. So when people are saying they're going to go LS1, LS2, I'm always pitching like, yo, just skip that and go straight to LS3, because the factory LS3 heads are so good that you won't need to replace them. So anytime you get an LS1, you're gonna be looking for 243 heads, or you're gonna be looking for aftermarket heads or something of that sort, just to make the power that this would make with the cam only. So eliminate that whole process and just get you an LS3 off the bat, throw a cam in it. If my Corvette didn't have an LS1, I would not be doing all the stuff that I'm currently doing to it. But deviate from the topic, I don't want to get too much in LSs versus LS or nothing like that, and you know, setups, but more so I want to give y'all a review on what the drivability is like. How do I feel about this coming from turbo cars? You guys know that this isn't my most powerful car. This car makes 500 horsepower with about 460 foot-pounds of torque, which doesn't sound that impressive coming from, you know, that I have a 900 plus horsepower SC that makes 740 foot-pounds of torque to the floor. But, you know, looking at the dyno, I was just like, the dyno numbers are, you know, you'll be like, it's not gonna be fast, but it's not about the overall power number. It's the way this thing puts down the power and how soon the power comes on, which is the impressive part when it comes to LS motors. Y'all know 350Zs don't really weigh that much, and they're, you know, they're basically the same as like a C6 when it comes to weight. They're basically baby Vettes when you put LSs in them. If I'm correct, from what I remember, the LS actually weighs a little bit less than the factory VQ motor that comes in here, because LS motors, they're not that big. They're pretty small. Granted that it has 2 more cylinders, but you eliminate 3 cams basically, because this is a single overhead cam, whereas the VQ motors that normally come in 350Zs, those are going to be quad cam motors. So, you know, you eliminate 3 cams by going with this. This motor sits way lower than the VQ in there. Like my strut bar would probably actually fill it. I can probably fit an LSA on here without having to, you know, remove my strut bar. That's how much room that this has. Like even when you're just sitting at a light, bro, you can like feel the torque. Like everything's just rocking side to side. People hella look at you like, what the hell is in there? But man, like I remember I used to hate on these, like, nah, LS suck, blah blah. Now I'm never doing it. It wasn't until I drove one to where I was sold on it. Like a lot of people that hate on LSs hate on it because so many people do it. They feel like it's overdone, but the reason it's overdone is because it works, bruh. Like it works. The way this puts down power is just, it's so different. Like a lot of people are gonna hate on it because they never tried it. They never experienced it for themselves. So they see everybody else doing it and they just want to be different. The torque is what makes this feel like such a fast street car. Where this thing makes power in the power band, like everywhere, there's no lag, there's no wait for it. Like the moment you tap it is the moment you have power, which makes this feel like such a fun car. Insane torque, bruh. Insane torque. The power band is what makes this so fun. Like if you've never drove a LS car, you wouldn't like fully understand like how linear the power band is and how powerful it feels. Like, ignore the horsepower number in the dyno chart. My SC power band looks like this. Whereas this power band, off the punch, is just like, straight up. Up top, does this have power? Up top, no, you're not going to compare this to something along the line of a ZR1 or something that, you know, that's boosted and has the horsepower up top. But when it comes to down low, first through fourth, this car is going to be fun. Will this be a great dig car? Fantastic from a dig. From a dig, this car will murder. From a roll, it does good because it's a light car, it has good power, but where this car shines is from a dig. Man, this is such a sick setup in a light car. So this, like an LS3 and a 240, a 350Z, a G35 would definitely be impressive. I think where it starts becoming unimpressive is when you start putting these motors in cars that are extremely heavy, that weigh just as much as an SS Camaro and stuff like that. But if you're putting them in light chassis like, you know, 350Zs and stuff like that, then, you know, it's 100% worth it. I feel if you're gonna be putting these in something bigger, then you're obviously gonna wanna, you know, boost it or whatever. Depends on your goal, depends on what you like, depends on how fast you're trying to be. But as far as in this little baby ass chassis, the car feels fantastic, yo. I have no complaints and I'm happy with the decision. Just torque everywhere, man. Torque everywhere. I love it. And as far as gas mileage goes, the car isn't that bad on gas. Obviously, it's not going to give you Prius quality gas, but you know, it's not that bad. It's definitely manageable for a 500 horsepower car. My Corvette was getting 31, 32 on the highway because that 6th gear is so long, but this definitely ain't gonna get that. But it also makes probably like 100 and some horsepower more than what my C5 makes. So, you know, I have no complaints about gas mileage. I have no complaints about the power, nothing. Like, everything about this setup was so, you know, it just matched up perfect. Granted, it's not the cheapest swap to do. You know, there's people that are saying, oh, I could do an LS swap for $7,000. Like, you're not doing the LS3 swap for $7,000. It just can't be done. Like, it's not gonna happen. So the swap kit alone was about $2,700 from ISR when I had purchased it. And then, you know, you go from there. The LS3 I actually found for $4,000 from somebody. But, you know, everything else that has to be done, like the wiring is an extra probably $1,200, and then you have tuning, the fuel system, like everything is gonna add up. So don't think you're gonna be doing the LS3 swap for $7 grand. Is it doable for 10 to 12? Yes, absolutely. You can do it for 10 to 12, depending on how much you find the motor, what swap kit you go with. Some swap kits are a lot more expensive than other kits, but my setup with rebuilding it and doing everything that I've done, I'm probably about, I want to say 15 grand into my setup. But my setup does have everything to be set up for AC and everything. So my car will have air conditioning, the heater, everything still works. As you can see, my gauges and everything still work on here, so everything's off cam. The only thing we need to get running is my oil pressure gauge. Oil pressure gauge needs the sensor hooked up, but other than that, everything on here works like factory. So I wanted the factory appearance on mine. You don't see gauges anywhere. Everything looks 100% stock. The shifter sits in the stock location. You know, if you wanted to do it half-assed and did gauges and you only wanted it to run, yeah, you can probably do it for about 10 grand. I see as the minimum. But realistically, I expect to spend at least like a bare minimum of 12. I want to say 12 to 16 to do it, you know, correctly. I could have did more things to this and made it more expensive, but you know, I feel like I did everything that I wanted on here as far as it being a street car. And, you know, like I said, I'm happy with it. Check this out. Like my SC will never do this. I don't care how much power it makes. It just doesn't have that naturally aspirated power feel. Like when you have an NA car, there's no wait for it, power hit. You just, and it just goes, bruh. Like that is the sick part about having, you know, a V8 in your car. That low end grunt, just punch it goes. There's no it's just go, go. All you hear is rumbling when you downshift. Let me add, even though my LS3 is built, I did forged pistons and rods, you would get the exact same power out of a stock LS3. Like going forged internals will not increase the horsepower alone. I just did the forged pistons and rods for longevity, because my motor, when I got it, after we did a leak down test, we noticed that it had like 20% leak down. So once we got it in the car and got everything running, I was like, yo, let's pull it back out and let's get this thing, let's get it built. That way, if I ever did decide to supercharge this or turbo it, I would have a motor that was, you know, capable of holding the power. But, you know, 500 horsepower, this thing feels so, like, it's perfect. I don't want to touch it. Like, it's going to, you know, hopefully with everything that's been done to it, the longevity is going to be there. And that's the main thing on this, because this was built to be my daily driver. I've been driving this thing ever since, you know, it came back out the shop. I've been driving it every day, no issue. It's been finished for about 2 weeks or so, and I've already put almost 800 miles on the motor since, you know, the last couple of days that I've been driving it. So I've literally been driving this thing every day and just taking it places, mashing it. It's, you know, it's a very well built setup, and it's perfect for a 350Z. Also, the sound that comes from it is just sick as hell. Like when people see it, they really don't know what the car is. Like surprisingly, like granted it's just a 350Z, but you'll be surprised at how many times I've been at the gas station and people are like, oh bro, like that's a sick Porsche or whatever, and I'm just like hella laughing. Like I literally had this one girl come up to me and she was like, oh, I love the color on the car, and I was like, oh, thank you. And she was like, oh, this is my dream car, always wanted one. I was like, oh, that's what's up. And then she was like, yeah, I've like loved Porsches for so long. And I was just like, I just started dying laughing, bruh. I was hella weak. I'm like, I guess I take the compliment. So that's why I always make jokes calling this a Porsche on, unless a Porsche on a GTZ. One thing I will say for the people that have never had cammed LS motors, this is a stage 3 cam, and I'm kind of glad I went with a stage 2 on the Vet, because the Vet with a stage 3 wouldn't have had as much drivability as this car does with it. Because you do have, like, if you look in the lower RPMs, if I try to hold it under 2 grand and I'm in a lower RPM, it will give you a little bit of the cam bucking. But if you're above that, you know, you'll be fine. But, you know, I've never had like an actual cammed V8 or anything, so getting used to the cam buck, at first I was like, hey, is there something wrong with the tune? I was hitting my tuner up like, hey man, it was, you know, it was bucking down low, but that's just the overlap and everything on the cams. It is a common thing if you go with an aggressive cam on there. Stage 3 is probably the most I would do far as a street car goes on the LS3. But, you know, there are people that do stage 4 for full drag cars. The Vet, I'm doing stage 2. I'm glad I went with the stage 2 on there, even though I haven't drove it. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be happy with it, just because this is a bigger motor. So if a stage 3 feels like this on this car, I can only imagine how it would feel on like a LS1. But I mean, the LS1 is going to be getting supercharged, so that one's going to be, that car is going to be boosted. Hella smooth though. Like the low end torque is probably like my favorite thing about this, bruh. Like you get so used to driving turbocharged cars, and you get like used to having that power up top and you get used to having the kick. But when you actually jump in something that makes torque at like freaking 2,000 RPM, you'll be like, yo, this is insanely fun to drive. Like, it's nothing like I've ever experienced before. I used to, you know, I used to be hella anti-LS, but I was more so like, oh no, 2J the world, 2J everything turboed, etc, etc. But with you know, after owning this, after driving it, you know, my perspective on how I feel about LS motors has changed a lot. Like, my first time driving the LS motor was Janky's IS300, and that car made exactly the same power that mine's made, and he let me drift it at an event, and I was just like, yo, this is pretty dope. And once I drove his car, I was kind of sold on wanting to do an LS3. And when it comes to horsepower and raw power, this isn't gonna compare to the SE, especially in a naturally aspirated form. Like, I see the whole argument with torque and everything like that. And let me say that my 2J makes way more torque than this. Like, my 2J roughly makes, I wanna say, about 740 foot-pounds of torque to the floor. So this doesn't compare far as torque numbers, but it's where this makes the torque at that's very important and why this car feels so fast. The power is all made down low. It pulls all the way to red line. My final thoughts and what do I think? Do I think it's worth it to LS3 swap a 350Z? And my answer is gonna be absolutely, bruh. As far as a street car goes, the power delivery out here is so fun. It's so usable. Sounds good, looks good, it fits in there well. Like, I'm overall, I'm happy with my purchase. I'm kind of, because I almost put a 2JZ in here, and I'm really happy that I didn't do a JZ, just because you know, trying something different and going with my first mind was like, this is, you know, it's definitely well worth it. If you can do it, like I said, do a LS3, and I promise you, you won't have any regrets on going LS3 over trying to do an LS1 or something like that. Now, if you just so happen to be a JZ person, a RB person, if you want to put a freaking whatever in there, you know, it's totally up to you. I'm just giving y'all my personal experience on what I think of the LS3. In the past, I've had 5.0s and stuff like that, but nothing ever to this extreme far as power goes out of a V8. So my 5.0s back in the day, like, zero comparison to this. And one more time, let me show y'all just how much lower this thing sits. Like, I can almost get my whole fist in there. Like, it is, dude, it's crazy lower. Like I said, I have no complaints, no regrets going LS3 in here. Zero, none. I'm happy I did it. I love it. So with that being said, I'm gonna wrap it up. At the end of the day, this is just my opinion. We're about to wrap it up. Until next time.
I've been going too crazy, these niggas too shady. Speed limit 65, I'm about to do 80. Fuck the niggas hating on. I've been on the come up. You can go to speed, but it's better if you run up. You can ride with a nigga, but I'ma give you a choice. If you really wanna holler, then I'ma give you a voice.